Welcome to Season 2 of the Soar podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs who want to build healthier, happier, more profitable self-employed businesses. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. Get ready to soar. All right. Today I have with me Nate Palmer. Nate, thank you so much for being here. Tell our listeners what it is you do and what your business is.
Hey, Ray. So thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to chat. I am a fitness and nutrition expert, self-proclaimed. I've written a couple different books about it. I work in that field, but basically I am just a regular guy who's really interested in how do you really maximize how our glutes are working, or how do we eat in a way that is performance enhancing rather than performance detracting. So that's, I'm also a dad, husband, entrepreneur.
Awesome. Love it. All the things, because we do wear all the hats when we run our own businesses, right? Yeah. So how did you get into this line of work? Like, have you always been interested in fitness and nutrition and body optimization, or what was your journey to getting to this?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us, my journey started with a kind of a fear-based response, or like feeling insecure. So I didn't get into training and stuff as a result of being the best athlete or being like a great football player or anything like that. I was never really athletic growing up. In fact, when my house got broken into when I was 12 years old, and someone came into my house, broke a window, I grabbed a knife out of the steak, like the steak knife out of the knife block, and I hid under my bed. And I think that was really the catalyst for me to get more into like physical culture and try to think about getting stronger, because my reaction was like, well, I don't ever want anyone to be able to have that power over me. No one ever can ever hurt me again. Yeah. And the more muscle armor I have, the less people will ever be able to take my autonomy away. So that's kind of where it started for me. But obviously you can't really make a career off of 11-year-old trauma. I guess maybe you can, but so I just kind of I stayed in it for a long time. I trained really poorly for throughout high school. And then when I was in college, I was just really drawn to learning more about this sort of thing. I wanted to know more about nutrition. I shirked like 100% of my classes in order to just stay up late at night, reading articles and blog posts in in 2007, 2008. And when I graduated, I was like, well, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Also, not a lot of jobs for new grads in 2008. Yeah. They were like, hey, entry-level position, we're going to pay you $12 an hour, must have 15 years of experience. And I was like, oh, right. Okay.
What the fuck? How are you supposed to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, what I'll do is I'll just become a personal trainer, kind of like, it's like sales, like having my own business slightly, but within the confines of a gym, until I figure out what I want to be when I grow up. Right. So still haven't really quite gotten there, but that's how it started, was working for a bigger gym.
Okay.
But what ended up happening was with the gym, you just didn't have any support. Really, no one was helping you build your business. It was all on you, no insurance or anything like that. So I had a kind of a medical scare, and I decided, hey, I need insurance. So I went back to the corporate world because I wanted the steady paycheck. I wanted the insurance. I wanted the security. And that lasted for not very long, because I thought to myself, well, if I just stay here, I'll just, this is how my life ends. This is where I draw the line.
Yeah. So, oh my God. Okay. I'm trying to decide where to branch off of that, because there's so many things that you said that I want to talk about. In particular, since you just left off with that piece about the steadiness, the health insurance, all these things that tend to allure us into the traditional W-2 9-to-5 job. That was your mentality then. What is your mentality now around those pieces?
Well, I think some of my goals have changed for sure. But I've also realized that money solves a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
You don't have insurance, you just need to make more money. Yeah. You want a little more security, you need to make more money. And I think that one of the cool things about it is that with the internet and the way the economy and the gig economy has gone, there's just so much out there and so much money that anybody can make. So I've got friends who are in just the craziest, most niche down things, between calligraphy. One of my friends is an artist. She buys old art from Goodwill, will draw monsters on it and then sell it on Etsy. there's all these like little cool niches that you can get into and just create more income. Because at the end of the day, we don't really necessarily have a security problem. We have an income problem, you know?
Exactly.
And when you're trying to take like this, like here's what your corporate overloads are gonna give you, and then try to piece that up and still do stuff with it, then you end up budgeting and scrimping and saving and cutting coupons and stuff like that. When I think the real issue could be solved is just add a little bit more right here, and you don't have to go back and clip coupons.
Exactly. And I love that you call them corporate overlords. That's great. But you're right. And that's why, in particular, I have a workshop called Price Yourself Perfectly. And it's this walkthrough of this spreadsheet that says, okay, what do you actually need to make for your absolute bottom line? And then for you to be comfortable, and then for you to have the dream life that you want with a 401k and a travel expense account and all of these things. And that health insurance, maybe dental insurance, optical insurance, whatever it is you want, the steadiness, the savings account, the cushion, that to me falls in that middle category. And if you adjust your pricing based on that, we're not talking about going from charging $200 for a blog post to $2,000 for a blog post. It's actually pretty subtle changes within your business that can allow you to have that bigger cushion and that stability and security that you provide yourself.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
And you've been able to do that through, it seems like you have kind of like multiple revenue streams. I mean, you're a personal trainer, you also do nutrition. I know you have a book out, multiple books. I see 2 books on your wall back there.
2 books.
Yeah.
2
So
books.
tell me about that. How have you kind of diversified the way that you are bringing in revenue and leads, which then supports the diverse revenue into your business?
So I've always heard that the average millionaire has 7 revenue streams. So that's kind of been the goal, is to just create these smaller revenue streams. Obviously, what I do right now is pretty much 100% online. And that's that's where I spend the bulk of my efforts. That's where the bulk of my finances come from. But I also want to be opening up like little recurring revenue streams. So I love the book for that. I love Amazon affiliate links for that. You know, like I'm not making a ton of money off of it, but all that adds up and kind of creates a snowball effect. So I really like the idea of like add-ons, right? And so I have not done this at like a very high level yet for my business, because I think the one thing that I'm missing really is supplements that go along with this. But like what do like, I feel like I always think about like, what's my business and what is the problem my business creates when I'm successful, right? Because like my business is helping people transform their bodies, right? So what are people going to need after they've transformed? They're going to need new clothes. They're going to need to keep buying supplements. They're going to need to maybe do like a different meal prep service. They're going to need like a couple of those other things. So I'm always trying to think about what are the problems that I'm creating in solving this problem, when like, how can I add those pieces onto like to create a more well-rounded business, as well as making like recurring revenue streams. So, you know, people need supplements right now. Like I basically am like, here are the supplements that I use with a little Amazon link on those. People like anything like that, where I can add a little bit here or there, kind of like create like, okay, you want to get my book? Well, my book is on Amazon. You can get that for $15, but also here's my affiliate link to get there. So just like as many little things as I can possibly add on to get there. I don't do really any personal training at the moment, but that kind of stopped out in 2018. As I decreased that, I increased the online presence.
And that really gives you that flexibility as well. I mean, when you are your own business owner, if you decide, okay, I don't want to do one-on-one or in-person training anymore, I'm going to shift my focus. It becomes much more easier than having to leave a company, get an entirely different job, or ask that company to grant your wish to let you transition into a different department. It just allows you so much more fluidity that supports the life that you want.
100%. And like last year, well, like 2019, I don't remember what it is.
We're in 2022.
Yeah,
this is 2022.
That's hard. Math is hard. I'm a trainer. I count to 8. Okay, come on. Anything above that is cardio anyways. But in 2020, I promoted myself to author. Like I just sat down and spent like 6 weeks hammering out this book on a daily basis. And you can't do that without the flexibility. So my goal, I get tied up in this. Sometimes it's probably a different thought anyways, but I always you hear about people like making so and so much a month, like at first it's like, oh, you got to hit 10K a month. And it's like, well, this guy's doing 50K a month. Oh, this guy's having 100K months. This guy's making $1 million a year. And I kind of started to push myself into those like comparing myself to other people.
Yeah.
Specifically in people in other businesses. One of the other income streams I had was coaching other personal trainers to bring their businesses online. So I'm not doing that anymore. I've kind of cut that out, but it's easy to fall into the comparison trap. So what I realized though, was that my goal, kind of to your point earlier, was time freedom and location freedom. So right now I've achieved half of that. I've gotten the location freedom. I can pick up my laptop, take it out of my office. We're going to Puerto Rico in the summer, just going to spend a month there, and I can work from there. Wow. It's amazing. Yeah. The time freedom though, we haven't quite achieved that yet, but having the clarity on what that looks like and what it takes to achieve that, and what that number is, in order to be like, I can set my own schedule. I can do whatever I want to. I can take full weeks off. Yeah. Knowing that makes it much easier than having this nebulous, like, hey, it's $1 million. Cause money only solves money problems. And once you get rid of all your money problems, then you're left with everything else.
And to that point, I mean, it's funny because at the beginning we said all these issues with stability and insurance and things, they're solved by money. So it's kind of like those baser needs. Like, we need to make sure that if something happens, if there's a car accident, we can pay the health insurance bill. We need to make sure we can pay the mortgage. We can pay for the trip to Puerto Rico. You can do all the things that you really want to do and provide for yourself and your family. And we need money to do that. And then there are these higher level needs, like healthy relationships, time with our family, that money supports us in, because then we're able to, increase our hourly rate, reduce the amount of hours that we're working, and get those things. So it's all connected. But the mistake that people often make is thinking money equals happiness. No, money is just the conduit. It's the facilitator. And you have to do the hard work of figuring out what is actually going to make you happy.
I think the trap that I fell into was not necessarily money equals happiness, but money equals worth. Like my self-worth is somehow related to the financial success I was having, because, especially in online coaching, that kind of the industry I was in, everyone would talk about the success in terms of like, what was their monthly revenue? Yeah. And like, this was really good, and this was medium, and this was bad, and that was kind of the spectrum. And I think I kind of adopted that. And it took a second to be like, whoa, I don't like, is not indicative of my self-worth. Like when I went from this and I went to this next level, like nothing else in my life changed. I still drove a Honda Fit. So like taking it back a second and be like, what is actually important and where do we need to get to? So going back to like what you're talking about, like, what's that base, what's living comfortably? And then what is this like living like in your version of whatever lavish is.
Right. And it's all about also knowing what your measures of success are. Because I have known some people who are millionaires, they make $2-3 million a year, and yet they feel broke because their money is constantly going to things that they don't actually care about. They're like, I just made all this money, but where did it go? They don't have good money sense. They don't have a good relationship with money. And they're constantly fixated on money as their measure of success. Whereas if your measure of success is you're healthy, you're stress-free, you can sleep really well at night, you get all this time with your friends and your family and your loved ones, and those are your measures of success, then again, money just becomes the conduit to you getting there.
Totally. 100% agree with that.
And one of the other things that you said that I think ties in with your worth, and you said this at the beginning, you said that you're an expert, self-proclaimed. Now, I want to know why you felt like you needed to kind of like clarify that or justify that. And the reason is because I have so many freelancers that I work with, writers in particular, for some reason. This seems to be like a plague within the freelance writing community, where they have a really hard time saying that they are experts. And yet, if you look at the definition of expert, it is someone who has an above average level of knowledge. Well, that could mean anything. It could mean that you have been doing it for 2 years or 2 decades. So tell me about that. Why you said self-proclaimed expert and what that really means for you.
So I'm really glad you asked this, because I've actually thought about this a lot and I've struggled through it, because like, no question, I'm an expert in fitness and nutrition. Yeah. I've spent well over my 10,000 hours studying, researching, writing. I've got over 400 articles in my blog posts. I've got 160 podcast episodes. I've got 2 published books. Like I've got 600 videos on YouTube. Like I have all those things, but like, whenever I show up and I'm like, I am the expert on fitness and nutrition. I just feel a little bit douchey doing that because at the end of the day, like that's not my identity. Like
Yeah.
I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm an adventurous guy. I'm a guy you want to like, I want to sit down and have a beer with you.
Yeah.
I don't really want to like put on, especially in like the fitness industry, I think is just so full of people like flexing on the gram that I don't want to bring that energy with me and like have people like, so here's what happens when I go to parties, right? So I go to a party and people are like, oh, hey, what's going on? What do you do? And I'm like, oh, I do like fitness and nutrition coaching. And they're like, oh, don't judge me for eating this food. And I'm like, okay. They're like, tell me what you think about this. So my aunt's doing keto right now. And I'm like, I have to leave now. I'm going home. So like, I like being an expert. I do feel a good amount of like self-confidence and self-worth from having pursued this for such a long time. I've been in it for 13 years now, which is way longer than my friends have all jumped around jobs, you know, and they're experts at what they do, but they've not been in the same vein for so long. But I also don't want to like propagate the idea of that, like, you know, like all fitness people look this way, act this way, have a man bun, just generally, you know, like you don't want to like, I'd rather show up and you just be like, hey, that's Nate, that's my buddy. And then people find out later, like, oh, he wrote some books, he did these other things. Like that's kind of how I like to show up. And I don't know if that's even the right idea for like podcasts like this. So,
well, I wonder, okay, so I'm very much a words person. I'm a copywriter by trade. And so I'm wondering if it feels differently to you to say, I'm an expert versus I'm the expert.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely legitimacy to both. I would say I'm an expert in fitness and nutrition. I'm the expert on performance eating for high performers and business owners.
Perfect. And so what advice would you give someone who is struggling to own that expert status within the service, the very legitimate service that they provide their clients?
Well, as you can tell, I am of many minds about this. So I don't even know if I have great advice. I feel like the things that have helped me really solidify, like maybe not how I present on podcasts or speeches or whatever else, but internally, like making me feel very like getting rid of like kind of the imposter syndrome and making me feel very confident in the message I have to deliver and like the way I go about delivering it was just saying it all the time. So finding places where I could talk about this. So like at first, you know, it's in my blog and because no one cares about me. And as I started a blog in 2011 and I just wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and my writing is dog shit. And I go back and I look at it and I'm like, this is so cringe. I can't even believe I wrote this, but I just kept going and it gradually got a little bit better, got some traction and stuff. Then podcast, you know, the podcast was amazing because that forced me like real time to talk through some of these thoughts that I had. And so you come up with like little stories and anecdotes and pithy quotes and things like that would just kind of come out. And so now at the end of like dozens and dozens of podcasts, I feel like I'm very confident to answer any questions really that relate to health and fitness at all. Even if I'm not necessarily like 100% sure of the answer, I can at least take the conversation in a way that will provide some value as well as not make me look like a total fool. So.
Yeah.
That's some advice. Take it or leave it.
I think that's great advice. And I think that's really the antidote to imposter syndrome is doing something and telling people about it and talking about it as much as possible. And you've done a brilliant job of getting yourself tons of exposure. I mean, you've talked about videos and blog posts and podcasts, and you have 2 books. And I mean, that's a lot of eyes on you. And there has to be a certain point where, of course, in the beginning, you're kind of like, oh my God, don't look at me. Like, please, nobody look at my blog. Like, still getting my feet wet here, still trying to figure out what the fuck I'm doing. And then I
thought it was amazing at first when I wrote it. I was like, oh, I'm so smart. Look at this. So good.
Or you've got the other pendulum swing. And then at some point you just kind of feel like, oh yeah, I am answering all of these questions and I do know what I'm talking about. And it sort of clicks into where you feel like you actually are the expert that you were originally just self-proclaimed, but now you actually are that thing. Was that true for you? Did you feel that kind of shift at some point in your career?
I do think so. And I think that so kind of like throughout my career, what happened was started working at a gym, went to a corporate world, talked to some of my mentors. They're like, you need to open up your own business doing training. So I started a personal training business, like where I was self-employed, but just like working out of someone else's facility, started getting my own clients, loved that, sold that business, moved to Seattle with my wife. And then in Seattle, so I'd already been doing this for about 3.5, 4 years, was when I started like feeling like, okay, I got this, because all of my time I was just obsessed with this stuff. I was just like, so if I wasn't at the gym, I was reading about it. And if I wasn't reading about it, I was writing about it. So like I had, like by the year 4 or 5, I had easily eclipsed 10,000 hours of like total practice and immersion of just like, because I was so obsessed with this. And I remember thinking at that time, I was riding the bus in, we only had one car, it was in Seattle. And I remember like reading through an article that was written by one of my absolute like heroes. So someone I'd been reading since 2007, like followed all of his stuff. And he wrote an article and I was like, I wrote that article like 4 weeks ago. Like we talked about the same thing. I kind of brought up the same points. And we talked about like, I put in a study that he referenced. And I was like, did I do it? Did I arrive? And I remember that moment.
And so that brings up another point. It's kind of like this, I feel like it's just this pendulum swing between, I know what I'm doing and I am an expert. And then, oh my God, I'm an imposter. I'm a fraud. Everyone else is already saying the things that I want to be saying. What is that like for you when you realize that you're putting out content and then you see someone else saying the exact same thing? Does that ever make you feel like you need to withdraw, or does that actually give you more fire to go, no, actually, I'm saying what the pros are saying. I think I belong here.
That's a great question. And I feel like for me, like in this instance, this guy named Jason Ferrugia, I think he wrote an article about sprinting or doing hill sprints. And I was like, I just talked about hill sprints. I do hill sprints all the time. So like that was a really affirming moment for me, because it was published on this article, this website called T Nation, Testosterone Nation, one of like the top bodybuilding websites. And then like a year later, I was published twice on that website. And I was like, I did it, I arrived. But the one thing that I think kept me going and pushing through a lot of times when it's like, I don't know, should I publish this? Am I actually an expert? And again, just like, this is just Uncle Nate's advice. Just take this with a grain of salt. But I would always think to myself, hey, nobody gives a shit about this. Nobody's going to read this. No one cares. Publish it anyways. Put it out anyways. And like, cause sometimes I think that we get so hung up on like, what does Ray think? What does my mom think? What's my friend think when he reads this? They're not going to read it. No one's going to read it except for the people who A, really love you, or B, are genuinely interested. So like, if you put out something that's stupid, it's not going to get any eyeballs because it's stupid. And that's like, and that's honestly like it feels good to me to be like, oh, you're like, no one's going to read it and be like, wow, this guy's horrible. He's the worst. You know, like they're going to just zone out and on to the next thing. People aren't even really thinking about you. And that has helped me a ton, because I would consider myself to be fairly prolific in this space. So, and I'm not batting 1,000, you know, I'm batting about 300. And so like 70% of my stuff is like, I look back and I'm like, ooh, what? Why did you put this out into the world? But it's always helped me to be like, no one's going to read this. No one cares. And I heard someone say once, I forget who it was, but they said for every person that you have in your mind when you write, you can decrease the quality of your writing by 10%.
Ooh.
So if you are thinking about, what is my mom going to think about this? Should I really swear in this article? What's my friend Jeff? I had a friend named Jeff. He was much cooler than I was. He lived rent-free in my head for about 6 years. I always ran through things like, was Jeff going to think about this? Jeff probably didn't read any of my stuff. Like, you know, like it wasn't an issue, but I always just felt like judged a little bit. Like, I don't know. Am I cool enough to write this stuff? Write it, put it out anyways. It doesn't matter.
And on the flip side of that, have you ever experienced having a hater, someone who just tears you apart in the comments? And has that ever happened for you?
Yeah, a couple times. I actually I've been trying to put out like on my Instagram feed, make it really like super cute and have like every third one be a transformation picture. Someone hit me up the other day and was like, why are you posting so many transformation pictures? I'm about to unfollow. And I was like, bitch, what? So I didn't say that. I instead went to my wife and I was like, I'm really mad at this person. She's like, you need to be calm. You need to have a cool head about this. You need to treat this. So I answered very respectfully, but in my head, I was like, then get out. No one asked you to follow me. One time I did get completely roasted by this professor. So I wrote an article on Huffington Post called, what should you do first, cardio or weight training? And I tried to take this complicated topic about like the oxidative pathways and how you burn fat versus how you burn oxygen versus how you burn carbs, and distilled it down to like, I talked about like how doing cardio first was like digging with a shovel, and then how doing cardio last was like digging with a backhoe. And I kind of made some comparisons in there. Maybe my math wasn't what we'd call 100% right. Like I said, I'm a trainer. But this dude, I think he was a professor at like Brown University or something like that. And he told me that I was everything wrong with the fitness industry, and that like, I'm the reason that people can't get results.
Wow, that's heavy.
I didn't write again for 6 months. That one stung. That one hurt me.
And ultimately, did that hurt your business? Did that hurt your career? His comment?
No, not even a little bit. No one
It
cared
just
about
hurt
him.
you.
Yeah, he sent me.
It hurt your writing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he lived through my head for a few years.
Yeah. Yeah. So for the people who do get those haters, which I feel like it's kind of a mixed bag. You know, we live in this digital everything, share everything, video everything. You know, my assistant who runs my social media, she's absolutely fantastic. And she's like, oh, we should start doing TikTok videos. And she goes, there are people who I actually watch them just go through their morning routine of making their coffee. And I watch it every day. And I'm like, who the fuck is recording making their morning coffee? I mean, this is so like benign. It's so mundane, but that's our world. We live in this social media, record everything, share everything sort of world. And so everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to comment on what you're doing and what you're saying and your philosophy and the way you look. And yet at the same time, I feel like we've entered this era where the majority of people, they're very like vocal about being supportive and positive, and the quote unquote trolls seem to be kind of dying out the louder the positivity gets. Has that been your experience?
I've never really dealt with like a ton of trolls. You know, I've had ones here or there. I like it because it's like, especially when it's not like someone who's like, you're the worst, and what you said is completely wrong. If you say that I'm wrong, like, then I'm like sad. But if you say that I'm stupid, I'm like, okay, let me go to your profile and find all the stupid things you've ever said in your entire life. And I go down this rabbit hole of just like malevolence, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's funny, because then I can come back and write just like crazy responses to people, which makes me laugh, you know? I think that like, if I'm having a good time, then that's kind of the point anyways.
Yeah.
But so everyone in my life has generally been pretty supportive, like, especially like verbally, you know, whether or not they are financially supporting me, actually reading my content or checking it out, like maybe not, but everyone's always been like, hey, good for you. You're doing a great job. Hey, I'm going to check out your book. I'm going to like, you know, I'm going to send you this person. So I've never really felt like I could be one of those people who's like, this one's for the haters out there. Everyone who said I could never do it. And by the way, like, who are all these people who are like, especially teachers? I feel like teachers get shit on all the time. They're like, my third grade teacher said I never amount to shit. You're like, did she? Or she just said you couldn't go to the bathroom? Like, what teachers are out there being like, you'll never amount to anything? I've never met a teacher who says things like that.
Yeah. That's pretty atypical for teacher behavior. And you are so prolific. You do have so much content out there. And so I'm hoping that serves as an inspiration for people who are hesitant to put something out because they're afraid that somebody might comment on it negatively. Because I feel like when you come from a genuine place and you write content that you genuinely believe in, or you film videos, you record podcasts, or whatever it might be, that you are actually 100% behind, the likelihood of you getting a quote unquote hater is significantly reduced. And so then the question just becomes, well, what do you actually want to create? And so from your perspective, you have done pretty much all of it. You've done video, you've done audio, you've done print. What would you recommend for people who are just wanting to start putting the word out there, start showing their expertise and just expressing themselves and what their actual passion is?
Yeah. So I think this varies from person to person. And so I've tried out a lot of different modalities. I love writing. Writing's my favorite. I've always had some sort of blog, even going back to like if you think my 2011 fitness blogs were gross, like my 2004, like high school blogs, I'll never be president, Ray. So, but you got to figure out what you like, you know?
Yeah.
I like writing, and I feel like I'm pretty good at expressing myself and communicating through the written word. But I found when I first started doing videos, they were rough. It's a
Yeah.
new skill. My first podcast, I got to interview John Lee Dumas on my podcast, my second episode, because I just had like a hookup. You know who that is?
I've heard of his name, but I don't know of him. No.
I mean, talk about prolific. He runs Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's a massive
Okay.
podcast
Yep.
platform, all these things. And I was the worst. It was a horrible interview. I think I got in an argument with him about an Aura ring. Like,
Oh my God, no way.
it was so awful. You can go back and listen to it. It's up there. But like just like learning like the skill of talking on camera and feeling natural was a big steep learning curve. But like trying to like learn how to do a podcast, I was like, well, I'd go back and I'd watch like Larry King interviews because that dude is the best. He was amazing at it. So I'd like watch how he does it because I was like, I suck at this. How can you make it look so fluid?
Yeah.
But like, so two things. Number one is find the thing that you are like interested in or drawn towards. If you're drawn towards TikTok videos and you just want to be like, hey, here's what's up. I'm making some coffee right now. Everybody let me look at my house. Like, awesome. Like that's definitely like a type of media. And that's one of the fastest growing social media platforms of all time. Like we're like on this crazy trajectory.
Yeah.
But also I would say like as an encouragement, if you're not amazing at TikTok off the bat, if your video edits look a little janky, if your podcast sounds a little rough, if your sound quality isn't super great, you got blog posts with grammatical errors in them, don't stop. Just do a better next time.
Yeah.
Just do a little better next time. Because if you start a process like this and you just do a little tiny bit better, and every single blog you do a little bit better, and you learn a little bit more about SEO, and you learn about how to put up titles, and then, okay, now we're going to work in some Canva and some graphics and stuff like that. You're going to look back and be like, wow, look how far I've come.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost more important than being super polished right off the get-go.
Absolutely. That progress is so incredibly motivating. And so I love that you said you can still go listen to your second podcast where you get in a fight with this guy who you totally admire. You didn't take it down. So tell me about that. Most of us, I think if we look back at our work and we're like, oh my God, this is such shit. Like I did such a shit job. We cringe and then we go unpublish. But you haven't done that. Why?
I feel like we're also always our harshest critics, right?
Yeah.
So I'm doing tonight is my third stand-up opportunity I've ever done. So again, like if you just take all that into consideration, I'm not good at it. And so my second one, I recorded it and I went back and I watched it, and the whole time I was like, oh no, oh, why would you? Oh, oh, honey, please. So like, they were like, and this wasn't like 2011. This was 2 weeks ago. It was not good, not good. So, but I think that like, I hate it. My mom loves it. Like there are people out there who see it and like it, that not everyone has access to what's going on inside of our brain. A lot of us have the curse of knowledge where we see all these things and we follow, like for me, I follow 50 different personal trainers and authors and writers and people who are amazing. But for most people, if you're following me on social media, I'm like one of two fitness people you follow. Like, you don't see all this other stuff. You have no basis for comparisons, So like, someone is going to run into your stuff and be like, that article you wrote is awesome. And you're like, oh, that one that sucks. And they're like, it didn't suck. It was great. It was exactly where I was at the time. And I think you just got to let those things percolate a little bit because it's a little bit cringe. And like, I'm not really proud of some of that early stuff. But if I took down every single thing that I wasn't proud of, I wouldn't have any content left,
Yeah.
So I just leave it up and I move on, and like, all the stuff where it's actually bad, I'll eventually take that down. Like, shout out to my MySpace page, but
does that still exist? It's on a server somewhere.
Probably. Like you can't get rid of stuff on the internet. There's a website called Wayback Machine, which I've gone and looked at some of my old stuff with.
I love Wayback Machine.
How do I delete Wayback Machine?
Yep, exactly. So ultimately, it sounds like the moral of the story is just do it. Find the thing that you're passionate about, immerse yourself in it, create what you're called to create, and don't look back. Just keep making progress.
And I think that is not just a lesson for business owners and people who are working on a side hustle. That's a lesson for life. Like, I'm never going to be an NFL athlete. I don't have the talent for it, right? I'm never going to end up on that field. But for everything besides professional sports, like on the highest level, like musical stuff, you don't need talent to be a success. whether you're building a business, whether you're working on physique, whether you're trying to drop some weight, whether you're trying to be in a better partner in your relationships, all that stuff takes consistent effort over time. So many people overestimate what they can do in a month and underestimate what they can do in 3 years, And so if you look at it a little bit of a longer time span, you can be so successful, and you might not feel like it in the moment, but if you look back on where you came from because you didn't quit, you're gonna be as shocked and amazed at how far you've come.
And on that fantastic note, where can people check you out, Nate?
Where do you want me to start?
Everywhere. All the places.
Hit up MySpace. It's www.
No.
Nate Dog. MySpace is cool.org.
Oh God.
No, you can find me. You can check out my book. It's on Amazon if you want to grab it. If you want, though, I'd love to give that away for free to anyone who's listening to the show. You can go to N8 trainingsystems.com/book to get there. By the way, Nate Training Systems, N8 Training Systems. I spend like 77% of my time being like, no, it's 8. No, like 7, 8. Again, that's a symptom of a decade-old blog that I wish I would have gone back and just been like absin24hours.com or something like that.
Oh yeah. If we knew then what we know now. Excellent. Well, we will drop all of your links in the show notes.
I'm also on Instagram at $1 Million Body Method, probably on YouTube also.
And your podcast?
It's called the $1 Million Body Method Podcast. Burn
Excellent.
fat and get motivated with Nate.
Love it. Love it. And we will put all of those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, Nate.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome. Hey, Ray here again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us in your favorite podcasting platform. Want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at chironconsulting.us/podcast.